As you take in a look of emptiness, you feel a sense of foreboding and a touch of nausea. In front of you stands someone you know is successful, a person others respect, but you'd never know it by looking at them, especially now. The expression you're taking in makes you wonder, isn't winning supposed to make people happy? Isn't being successful a good thing? But the longer you stare in the mirror, the more disheartened you become as you contemplate, what's wrong with me? I worked so hard to get here. Today, this episode is going to explore the quiet disillusionment that can follow achievement. The moment when a leader reaches their goal, gets the promotion, hits the job, makes the number, earns the recognition, and yet still somehow feels incomplete. The crack is not the disappointment itself. The crack is realizing that achievement was never supposed to carry the full weight of identity, worth, or fulfillment.
I thought I would feel so much better once I got here, and yet that is a powerful vignette, Jeff. You ever experienced that yourself?
I have several times. 2 times in particular come to mind, and I think I've shared the story before where I was in command of my first ship, and my deputy commodore was like, "Are you having any fun?" And I was like, "Stupid question is that? No, I'm not having any fun." And he's like, "Maybe you should try to. You worked your whole life to get here. Maybe you should find a way to enjoy yourself. This could all go away. If today was your last day ever doing this thing you worked so hard for, don't you want to remember it in a positive way?" And it was like one of those moments in a movie where the camera suddenly zooms out and you see the person questioning everything. And so I have to thank Tom Schultz. He's now an admiral, Admiral Tom Schultz, then at the time commander. He really helped me in that first moment where I really felt it. Like,
fascinating. And what a life-changing moment to have somebody activate within you, almost a shake off of autopilot to realize I'm missing out on the right here and now. This arrival fallacy, I got to see it myself this week in a very unexpected way. I was at a hospital and with a family member who was having a procedure done, and the physician came in to help explain what was going to happen in the procedure. And we'd met him once, very nice person, chief of the department, world-renowned department, and super fancy environment there. And in walks a resident who is going to be doing some of the prep work. And the resident introduces himself and says, "I'm Dr. So-and-so." And he had this look on his face of just forlorn, not doing great. And so when the main physician walked out, the surgeon walked out, I said, "Thank you for taking good care of us. This is, you can't imagine what an impact you have on people's lives." And he said, "And it's really cool. And I love the science. I love the people part." And I said, "Sounds like there's a but." And he said that his day-to-day experience is muted somewhat because he was thinking that by now he would have figured out how to have a full day and go home and be able to turn it off. And he can't do that. And so I remembered that from my own professional experience. If you don't leave it at the door, you take it home with you. And he said, "I imagine when I was in medical school that I was going to be doing all these surgeries. Everybody was going to be high-fiving at the very end, and we would all be best friends. And it just doesn't work that way. It's a really stressful environment." And he's like, "Why am I even telling you this?" But the point is, it was the arrival fallacy right in front of us from somebody who said, "I thought it would be different when I got here." So I love this topic. Thank you for bringing this to us tonight on Imperfect, Better After Broken, Jeff. I am Susan Hendrich.
And I'm Jeff Servello.
And you are listening to us here on Sandcastle Radio. Imperfect, Better After Broken is the show where we celebrate the cracks, the scars.
All right, the cracks, the scars, and all the good stuff that get us going, right?
That's right. I thought by the time I got back to this, it would be different. Arrival fallacy, right? So you work so hard to get to this station in life, and you still have that longing, there's got to be more, or there was supposed to be more. What do you think the origin of that experience is?
When we set goals, we adapt our identity toward the attainment of those goals.
Mm.
So I'm going to run a marathon. So then I go all in on being a marathon runner. And then when I finish the marathon, it's now what? And for the people who can say, right, I'm going to run a marathon versus I'm going to be a marathon runner, right? Being a marathon runner continues versus when the first one ends. So it's really the way we're framing our goals, the way we're focusing ourselves and identifying attainment of those milestones so that we are able to really normalize the changes that happen while we're in pursuit of those goals.
Identity versus activity, and how dangerous it is if our identity is really wrapped up in whatever pursuit we're working on. And I get it. I had that as I was in graduate school. I'm going to be a clinical psychologist. And then I chose to work in a forensic space. I'm going to be a forensic clinical psychologist. And then I get there and it's really cool and it's exciting, but the achiever mindset is unable to rest once that achievement has been obtained. And what if you are thwarted from that direction? You can't run the marathon. You blow out a knee as a football player. The career that you thought was going to be amazing as an engineer or a bookkeeper doesn't work out to be the same. So be careful about how our identity morphs into the vessel that we are filling. But at the same time, how do you be present along the way?
A great quote I read in Psychology Today that talked about the arrival fallacy is what happens when we make a future outcome responsible for a present feeling. And so I had talked about it being really goal related, but I think it could be any outcome. I'll be happy if I'll feel great when, it'll be okay when this thing happens. It can be anything. When I get my new watch, when I get my hair cut, when I go to the concert, when he proposes. The outcome shouldn't be what you're basing your feelings off of.
Outcome is not in our control. The inputs are within our control. But A, we don't have complete control of the outcome. And B, the outcome isn't always what we make it out to be from the outside. It's very easy to have a fantasy about what it's going to be like to be called doctor, or to be called captain, or to have the keys or the card to swipe into the doctor's lounge, or whatever it is that you think earning access to is going to bring to you. But the arrival fallacy, which came from Tal Ben-Shahar, I believe, is all about that belief that if we can get to the place, then we will have the feelings that come with it. The advertising industry has made trillions of dollars over the years creating an arrival fallacy. In fact, emphasizing the deficit that we currently have because we don't have the George Foreman grill or the camper to hook on to the back of your vehicle. The arrival fallacy. I just wonder how many people out there can relate to this, where they got where they thought they wanted to be and it didn't turn out to be the exciting end of the story that they thought they would have.
You talked about advertising, and I started to think about there's a scene in Mad Men, and it's in the first season, and Don Draper is at his mistress's apartment, and there's another guy there, and the guy's kind of bohemian and giving Don the business for being in advertising. And he's like, what do you think love is? Love's not real. Love's something guys like me sell you so that you'll go do this thing, that this feeling. But I think that point can be illustrative of the values we ascribe to things. I will feel really great if I do this thing. Well, will you feel really great if you do the thing, or will you feel really great working up to do the thing? And where is your focus? And you brought up my friend Joe. He's actually visiting right now, and we were talking about this in the kitchen before we started taping. And one of the things that we talked about is we have a friend who seems impervious to the arrival fallacy at the moment because his goal is not where he's at right now as a stepping stone. So we'll see in a couple of years if he gets to that ultimate goal, what happens to him. But he is invested in the process, right? It's, again, we'll use the marathon running. The joy comes from the day-to-day process for those people who can avoid the arrival fallacy. But if it's like, oh, I'm going to feel so great when I cross the finish line of my marathon, might. But I think you're also going to be filled with this, now what?
So Joe is in a striving space and someone who's trying out for their next team opportunity or who's studying in school or building toward a new career. So having that carrot ahead can keep focus. And then we arrive and it's not the thing we thought it was going to be. You mentioned something really intriguing earlier when you said, what if it's the journey along the way that turns out to be the magic and we miss it because we're too busy delaying gratification. Delaying gratification is a real and a very important skill to have, because if you can't, people may have heard of the famous marshmallow experiment where they put kids in front of a table with a marshmallow and they say, you can have this later, but not now. And then the adult leaves the room and the kid is filmed just looking at it and imagining what it's going to be like. And then the terror and the guilt they feel when invariably many of them inhale that marshmallow and then the adult comes back. But the delay of gratification has been shown to be a really important part of success, both from a mental health perspective, self-regulation, but also in the work environment, to be able to have a longer term goal and move toward that. But we can take that too far.
That's interesting. So when you talk about taking it too far, I want to ask you a question. How much as a society are we training this in people, or we're setting them up to be in this arrival fallacy spiral, right? Think about it in school. Nobody brags about their kid reading on level. It's always, my kid's reading ahead of level, or my kid is first chair, not just part of the band. And then when you get to work, we've talked about this when we're talking about performance management systems. 3.0 worker, somebody who shows up every day, does their job exactly the way they're supposed to, is a really good employee. But we are very dismissive of that employee, right? That's not good enough. Showing up to do your job every day is not good enough. You got to be striving. What do you mean you don't want to be the CEO? What do you mean you don't want to be you're not climbing? So it's almost like, I guess the question I'm asking is to what extent are we, big whatever, big corporate, big America, big education, big anything, or just the us versus them mentality, are we setting people up for this by not letting people enjoy the moment or not being appreciative of the average, so to speak? I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I think you understand what I'm asking, though.
Crystal clear. And you're bringing me to those awkward family events where the boyfriend or girlfriend brings their new love home to meet the family, and the family, so what are you planning to do with your life? Well, I'm kind of enjoying being a sophomore in my undergrad. What, you haven't already signed up for your postdoc internship? I love your question. Are we creating conditions for people to feel not enough and to become obsessed with arrival at the next station? I'm certain that we're doing that. We do it to ourselves, but those external messages, Don Draper, be darned, he spoke the truth about what the advertising industry, and I don't mean to besmirch the advertising industry, but that's the whole point. If you're not working on a deficit, you're not moving off of the couch you're sitting on. So the creation of that not enough mindset has a motivating factor. But what we do to our kids when we don't celebrate the fact that they are enough right now, we rob them of those moments, and we instill an engine that will never be able to turn itself off. And when will enough be enough?
I think it's a great question. And I think it's a great thing to think about. On the flip side to that, though, maybe the idea of what's next is the swift kick in the pants that each of us needs to continue to be ambitious. So I don't know. I wrestle with that. I wrestle with the idea of, I have this drive for something else, but I'm also trying to be in the moment. And so it's kind of, how do those two things coexist?
I'm excited to share something with you, and I know my dad would be okay with me sharing this. You just reminded me of something my father says every year on his birthday when we ask for birthday wisdom. And he's about to turn 88 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he says this every year. He said it on his 87th birthday. So we say, Dad, what's your secret to great living? And he said 3 things. Enjoy the present as much as you can while honoring and letting go of the past and refusing to believe that there's anything but hope for your future. Like he does this constant environment scanning for himself to make sure that he's being proud of what he's achieved or what somebody he loves has done, but also if there's a downturn, a valley in the story, to let that stuff go and don't get overly caught up in it. And then also to maintain hope for the future. And I messed up his words. I'm sure they weren't exactly like that, but that message of find a way to be here now, also appreciating how far you've come and being ready for the next step. So one more part to this. We had hiked to the top of, or a plateau on a mountain on a family trip. And my brother and I were just trudging. We just wanted to get to the top. Let's go. And we're running with all that kid energy. And my dad and my mom said, hey, let's stop here. And they had the picnic basket on their back, and let's make a picnic here. And we could not wait to get away from this crystal sparkling lake with these gorgeous pine trees and just an amazing, now that I think back on it, it was a beautiful plateau on the way up on the hike, but we weren't present in that moment because we couldn't wait to we get to the top, and my brother says, is this it? Parents who spend money on plane tickets and plan this thing, and it's going to be like this life-changing family. Is this it? So that was a moment of the arrival fallacy.
There's nothing like that moment as a parent where your kids unwrap all the things you poured your effort into getting them for Christmas, and then they play with the packaging instead of the thing. Why did I spend all that money? But I think this is a great point. And again, it's reminding people having goals is okay. Being ambitious is okay. But it's what you do with it and how you define it and how you characterize it, right? Wanting that promotion, wanting to grow, wanting that additional degree, wanting to try something. Don't confuse the downside of the arrival fallacy with us trying to tell you don't pursue those things. I think the message that people should take away from this is, and I'm going to channel your dad's wisdom in case I'm here, right? Keep your feet on the ground and reach for the stars.
Yes.
Reach for those things, but be grounded in it. Don't make checking those boxes or accomplishing those goals be the sole measure of your enoughness or your worth.
And that's a balancing act. Honor the past, be in the present, and have hope for the future. So for our listener, think about wherever you are right now. If you're in a car, if you're at home, if you're at somebody else's house, you're out at the beach, and look around for your history's sake and see, are there things near you that you once thought, if I only had this sofa to make the living room complete, or if I only had this car that I always wanted to drive, and then I could pull in next to the Joneses and they would be impressed. If I only had this outfit, or said the thing that we crave for, well, that corner office that we covet eventually becomes the office. The dream house eventually becomes a place where somebody leaves dishes in the sink. The promotion becomes a calendar filled with meetings you didn't request. And the award eventually becomes something that needs to be dusted. The thing that we have to have eventually becomes, we become nose blind to it, as we don't even realize that it's a rose right in front of us. So if you can look around your life right now and see things that you thought were going to make you feel amazing and they didn't, maybe you're out of balance. I would love to have a little meter that reminds me when things aren't going right, I'm either stuck in the past, missing the present, or terrified of the future. So whenever you have a struggle, find out where you are. Are you living in the past, the present, or the future? And try one of the other two to see if you can't shake loose the arrival fallacy.
I love it. And I'm going to put up in our show notes, I have a graphic that I created to go with this. I think that there's something that we can give people to work on, right? And we're going to use the word arrive as an acronym, right? So we're going to anchor an identity. All right, we need to define who we are, less by outcomes, but either on the process or the things that fill our cup. We've talked about this on multiple points throughout the show, right? What are the things, the hats that we wear, the roles we fill that give us purpose, right? So anchor in those identities. We want to recognize the wins. It's okay to be excited that you shot the best round of golf that you've ever played before, or it's okay to say that you made a really long putt or that you got the promotion. It's okay to be excited about the wins. Celebrate the wins. The second R is going to be redefine enough, but I think not enough. I don't think people define enough to begin with. So either define enough or redefine enough. What is going to be good enough for you? And it's so great. I was thinking about this about 8 months ago. I had a recruiter reach out to me and offer me an opportunity. And my wife looked at me and goes, "Why would you even consider that? You're happy. How can we put a price tag on that?" And it was one of those things that it was a moment that it was like, we right then in that moment redefined enough. Would more money be great? But to your point that you were just talking about a second ago, that comes with more meetings, more requirements, more things, and more sometimes can be better, but more sometimes can just be more. So we want to invest in the process, right? You want to run a marathon? Great. Enjoy the process of getting through the marathon. I think you said it to me before, right? Becoming is greater than being, right? So enjoy the becoming. Validate internally. Oh, I didn't win the gold medal. Probably is very disappointing, but you made it to the Olympics. How many people get to say that they made it to the Olympics? I have a really good friend who was a professional athlete and their career did not go the way they had hoped. But and that's a sticking point for him. And I try to remind him, you could take all the people that have played professional baseball and put them in Camden Yards and you still wouldn't, for all of professional baseball's history, and they still wouldn't fill all the stadium. So validate internally the fact that you got to do the thing that how many kids are out on a little league field right now dreaming about, so that you can build an internal validation so that you're not outsource driven. My worth isn't determined by, did I get the check in the box? Did I get the office? Did I get the thing? And the final E builds off of the redefining enough pieces. Expand your success matrix. What success actually look like? How many of us don't feel satisfied where we are because we don't have any objective measures of performance? We're just jellyfishing our way through the day.
If you don't have a goal, how will you know if you're moving in the right direction? That last one really got me, the expand. Which one of the Arrive acronym ones speaks to you most?
I think the redefine enough. That and anchoring identity. Really, and we talked about this when I made my transition from the military to being out of the military and becoming a coach. I really fought hard to figure out who do I want to be and re-anchoring my identity on something that was more in my control and invested in the things that made me happy. And then with that, I think comes redefining enough. Then what is enough? I can say I want to be a dad and that being there to coach their activities is important. How much? Does that mean I do it to the detriment of every other thing on my calendar? Or is it okay to go to a couple games? But I got to miss one so I can go spend time with my mom because being a son is important, right? So I think that then becomes a struggle that people wrestle with, but it's also fun to find that balance and experiment a little bit. It can be painful, a little bit of guilt. Sorry, mom, I can't go to dinner tonight. I'm going to the second grade recorder concert, which why anybody gives recorders. I think that's something the teachers union does to parents to say, we remember when you were a chucklehead and now this is your penance. We're going to have your kids do this to you.
It's a rite of passage. Did you know that there are professional recorder players? And how did I not know this? Of course, the little plastic thing that you get in the second grade is an approximation of something else. Well, lo and behold, the world's most renowned recorder and early music group is seated right here in the Philadelphia area. And my aunt, who lives next door, is on the board of PFRO, the recorder group, right? So what I love about this moment is she's going to hear this and she will know, because when I was a kid, she was so wanting me to be great at the recorder. It's a strong word. I did not enjoy playing the recorder. And so here's this moment where you're going to pass on the legacy. Talk about arrival fallacy. Oh, my sister's going to have a kid and she's going to grow up to play the recorder just like me. That didn't happen. But the point is, when you're going to miss opportunity A because you want to go and be there with your kid in the moment, it has nothing to do with the recorder, right? It has nothing to do with the horrible play on stage or the mangled little macaroni wreath that's made. It has everything to do with experiencing that moment with someone that you love. So Aunt Judy, this segment goes out to you.
Absolutely. I would love to know from Aunt Judy if the professional recorder players playing hot cross buns, how different that sounds from my daughter's second grade class when they played it. And I have the video of them playing it, and Whitney was pretty spectacular at it. So I'm very curious to hear how that goes.
Talent.
So Susan, what if we asked ourselves, when we're in this conundrum, when we're setting goals, what are we expecting this next achievement to fix? And then explore, what if it fixes none of it? What role do you think that would play in people being able to either implement the Arrive framework that we just talked about, or even just doing some other back of the napkin math on their own identity and happiness?
That's a deep question. What void is hanging on to an arrival fallacy filling? I have two theories on this. And the first one is, it has to do with FOMO. You and I talked the other day about JOMO, the fear of missing out, the fear that over there where they have the swimming pool at their house, they're having a better life. As she drives by in that amazing vehicle that I wish I could have, she's having a better ride to work. So when we create this FOMO experience in our heart, which the advertisers are all too happy to help us with, we somehow believe that there's better out there. And I think, to your point earlier, let's not completely vilify the arrival mentality, because the stretching and the pushing for more is part of what makes innovation great. But having that fear of missing out and fear that somehow by being happy with a B on the class or being happy with my middle of the road vehicle, there's something wrong with me. I think that's a major contributor. What do you think?
I think that it comes down to really asking yourself. I do like the idea of really looking at, what's my motivation behind this? I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who they want to pursue an advanced degree. What about that? What's leading you to that? And it was interesting because some of it was, I want the recognition. And the other part of it was, I want to develop the expertise. And then we talked about the arrival fallacy. And I'm like, well, I think if you do this only so people will be impressed by yourself, you're going to be disappointed and feel like you wasted your time and effort. But if you're doing this because it is something that motivates you and is helping you fill your cup, or you're refining your own enoughness, I think then that's okay. I think that helps you, right? If you're really defining enough and creating a system that supports getting to enough, that's good, right? To the car analogy, if me driving my 1985 Camry makes me feel like enough because I like to tinker on cars, I like to work on stuff, my son and I are doing it together, and the money I'm saving by not having a car payment, my wife and I are now flying first class to Bora Bora once a year, that's a pretty good trade-off.
Great word, trade-off. Every yes to something is a no to something else. Now, listener, don't be fooled. Jeff and his bougie vehicle collection is not to be taken lightly here, but I love that notion of what internally makes you feel good. If you hand the keys to your happiness over to someone else, no matter how hard you work, once you arrive, you'll always be living in that deficit state. taking me back to private practice for psychology on the Space Coast in Florida. So my partner and I could not have been more opposite in all the best ways. I'm a relentless, probably ridiculously optimistic person. And he called himself a radical pragmatist. We'll go with that. But everything was what could go wrong. And no, we don't want to spend money on that and this. And, oh, well, let's invest. Let's try. I'm not a spendthrift by any stretch, but I'd always want to move forward because we might be able to. So my view is always we might be able to. His view was always we might miss or we might fail, right? So these two opposite viewpoints, and then we get business decisions that come up that we would need to make together. And I'm hyperbolizing by saying I'm always and he's always. We both are capable of a spectrum of thought and behavior. But the idea of being happy with enough, we started to polarize because one of us was always wanting to try more and one of us was always wanting to clamp down and do less. We created within ourselves that neither was ever going to work. So how do you negotiate or partner with someone who has a different mindset from you on what is enough, whether that's in a relationship at home, whether that's a work relationship, or the relationship you have within your own spirit?
Oh, what a great thing to explore. I like the fact that you brought up partnering, and I think that's the key, is really exploring with them. Help me understand why you think that that's the right answer. In my mind, I'm thinking of, I have a friend who proposed to his fiance, and the ring wasn't good enough. In her mind, she had something else planned. And I remember that. I just remember him saying to her, is this about the size of the ring or what the ring represents about us getting ready to do? And I think that's the elemental part of the conversation you have with a partner is, are we checking a box? Is it the big check in the box or is it the process of checking the box? Again, what are we trying to accomplish? And what trade-offs are there? If it's a partnership, what are the trade-offs? Where are the opportunities where I can contribute to your enoughness and your identity and the things that make you anchored? And where are the parts of the process where we can contribute to my enoughness and my identity and my need to feel certain things?
Powerful story about the ring. Is it the ring itself or is it the schemata that we have constructed around what that means in terms of my worth or the value of our new partnership? So the rest of the story with my business partner in owning our practice, and we were growing like weeds. So it was a great problem to have to make these decisions. But what we discovered about each other was that we were both causing the same missing out on something that was right in front of us. I was causing the missing out by saying, hey, there's an opportunity. A police force needs, let's go try this. No, Susan, we have enough. We're already working with the fire department. So I was always in this kind of expansive mindset of trying more. And he was always running from. I was always running toward something. He was running from. And what do I mean by that? He doesn't ever want to feel again like he felt the day that something happened at home where a parent came home and had to announce that the job had gone away and that he remembers that visceral feeling of what it felt like to lose. And the family had just made an investment in an expensive vacation. So here they are, and they can't get the money back on the vacation. And so this deficit, I don't ever want to feel, as Anthony Kiedis would say, did that day, right? So he was running from being caught without means. And I'm running toward experiences and we both realized in that moment that neither of us was going to be satisfied because the joy of missing out and the fear of missing out were fighting with each other, and everybody was missing out. So if I could give my former self one piece of advice, it would be that you can strive, but don't do that at the expense of your ability to thrive. You got to be able to be here now while striving for something new, instead of constantly living in what could go right if we were only investing in this new thing, or what could go wrong if we put ourselves at risk. Right now, you can thrive.
I heard a theme under the surface there that I want to explore with you for a second. What role does our motivations or past experiences play in this? Because your partner had a core moment in experience that was very, and I have friends who have those same memories of families members who were fired or downsized or whatever, right? That's a very, when you watch that happen as a kid, that's a core moment, right? And then you share so many beautiful core memories of your family being encouraging you to explore and to push the boundaries. And so it's interesting how those core motivations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have this lovely ability to want to explore and see what's out there. And your friend or folks in similar positions have those moments of, I want to call it resource protection, but maybe
Yes, that's
I
it.
got to be careful with what I have. And so it's just very interesting. I never thought about it from a what's happened in the past influencing what I'm doing going forward.
Yes, and there's some psychology behind this. Let's go for a moment to StrengthsFinder, or
Mhm.
what is called the Clifton Strengths experience. If anybody's ever taken the Clifton Strengths StrengthsFinder, you find out what are your 5 strengths. There are 2 strengths that appear to be diametrically opposed to each other. The first one is called ideation. A sister one to that is called futuristic. These are definitely what could be. There is a strength called restorative.
Mm.
It's a beautiful strength. It's the tinkerer who will take the coffee can with the rust and turn it into a drum set for his kids, or take the Camry in the driveway, and pretty soon it's the envy of the town because it's got all these cool mods to it. So that restorative strength, my partner, he most definitely had that, and I share that. So I love to bring back the shine on something that may have lost it. So I was like this walking contradiction, that futuristic ideator, but also really enjoying to bring things back together. The core memory that I think I was avoiding was not my own. It was a vicarious traumatization where my father lost his father very young and had to drop out of school and take care of the family. And so my dad, he will spend the rest of his life, and he does this, being with us, being present, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I don't want to let him down by not being present and getting every last possible joy out of the moment. Makes me emotional just thinking about that. Whereas my partner, also traumatized by something that happened at home, but we each took different ways to feel safe. We are always trying to feel safe. So here's the psychology. David Rock has assembled a model called the SCARF model, and it's a way of understanding what is behind our conscious and unconscious interactions with others. So let's talk about what the SCARF model is. Status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. At any given moment, we are scanning our environment for whether or not one of these is in jeopardy. My status. You didn't call me doctor. I went to school and medical school, and you're calling me Ed. Status. Certainty. Wait a minute. I thought we were all going to work on this thing together to pick the place that we're going to go for vacation. And now you're telling me you've already decided where we're going to go and I don't get a vote in that? What happened? Autonomy. You don't tell me how to run my practice. Well, we're 50 owners. How do we do this? Thank God we got our act together and we were such great partners. But what that beginning piece, autonomy to be able to make decisions on your own. Relatedness. What do you mean you went to the Luke Bryan concert with so-and-so? I thought that was our thing. We always go to Luke Bryan when he comes to town. And then lastly is fairness, something that we are biologically wired to be watching out for fairness, because that's how we survived in cave people times, making sure that everybody got their fair share of the mastodon or whatever. That was a dumb metaphor. SCARF model. We're always scanning for threats to our safety. And we either are in a toward state because we feel safe with the scarf, or we're in an away state because we feel threatened. That's what's behind it.
That's awesome. Thanks for that insight. Shall we dig into our listener submission this week?
Let's do it. Favorite part.
Dear Imperfect, I'm in a role I worked for over a decade to reach. The title is respected, the pay is strong, and from the outside I look successful. But privately, I feel strangely flat. Not sad exactly, just underwhelmed. I thought I'd feel proud, secure, maybe even peaceful. Instead, I feel a pressure to prove I deserve it and anxiety about what comes next. I also feel guilty for not being more grateful. What's wrong with me?
The tyranny of the shoulds, as Albert Ellis would say. It's such a powerful experience. And I love the self-awareness that our listener has expressed. What came up for you when you read that for the first time?
There was a moment early in my career. So I was what they call a surface warfare officer. When you're as a surface warfare officer, the pinnacle is command. It's everything about being in command. And I had a friend who didn't want to go to command. And we were somewhere and he brought that up that he didn't want to go to command and he was ostracized for it. What are you doing here then? This is what it's about. This is what you should be excited about. Maybe, maybe not. That's what came up for me. And I don't know. I just think it's that thing where we place an importance on the thing. Well, that guy was really good at the job he was doing at the time. Why isn't that enough? Simultaneously, there are people who really want to go to command. That's great. So I don't know. I think about it. And then again, the Arrive framework that we talked about earlier popped up for me. I would love to dig deeper with our listener who sent us this submission to be like, what did you think was going to happen? Was this something you really wanted? Or was this something you were funneled towards? Because again, we've talked about it. In performance management systems, it's kind of like you move on to the next thing or you get left behind. There's a lot of organizations where there's an up and out mentality where being just really good at being a 20 some odd year floor nurse is looked down upon. Why haven't you become the charge nurse? Why aren't you a nurse manager? Why don't you have your DNP? Why don't, I knew people when I was in the Navy. I was a chief engineer of a ship. I had buddies who were like, I could be a chief engineer for the rest of my life. That would be the greatest thing in the world. I don't want to go to command. But there was no opportunity for them to do that. So they left to go do other things. So it's just interesting. That's what happened for me. I would love to know from our dear listener, did you really want this role? And if so, what about the role appealed to you? Mm-hmm. Or were you chasing something because you were hoping to fill something?
Excellent advice. And the concept of defining enough in advance to the degree that you can. Of course, you'll never know till you get to that plateau and you see the lake and the pine trees, whether it's going to be enough. But if you can create realistic expectations for yourself, that is powerful advice. And I also love the thought of when he or she, our listener, got this promotion that they worked so hard for, what was the internal experience they were trying to create? Because just like an engagement ring is an external symbol of something, the definition of a symbol is an approximation of something else going on of value. So if you are struggling with an external symbol, typically looking inward at what might be underneath that. What does it mean? You asked your friend, what does that mean about you as a person? If we could allow ourselves those internal meters rather than letting the outside world define. And I know how hard that is. We're a social world. We are constantly in comparison to something. But if we can anchor, to your point, to what really matters to us, what our personal values are, and measure everything against that rather than what the Jones family has next door, how much more self-sufficient will we be to meet our own needs?
I think that's a great point. And I do want to stress, because the second part of what the listener asked, I didn't answer, and I want to offer this. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way about your thing. I think that there is an adjustment that comes with change that needs to be accounted for. I think there's the motivation piece that needs to be accounted for. And I think sometimes you just don't know. How many times have you gone to a restaurant and you ordered something new and it comes out and you're like, ugh, that wasn't what I wanted. Judging by your smile and your giggle, it probably has happened more than once, right?
Yes.
So why would we not expect the same thing to happen with other things in our life?
That, Jeff, it makes me giggle for two reasons. One, I've definitely had it happen to me. My husband, Tom, I love him so much. He could eat the same meal every day for the rest. Those hamsters that you talked about on the ship.
So good.
If he could have sushi, there's like 4 or 5 things that he would be happy to have for the rest of his life. This one, I constantly got to be trying something new. And I'm always saying, well, just try it. If you hate it, you don't have, why? When this is here and I order it every time and it's great. Well, you might find something else. There was a time when you didn't know what that favorite thing tasted like. You had to try it to get there. So we go back and forth on that. And it's probably going to be a never ending giggle because I'll always want to try the new thing and he might not always, but what makes you happy on the inside is what matters.
And how emblematic is that of the whole theme, right?
Yes.
Of everything, you want to try the promotion, great. Try it because you're motivated and you like the pursuit. Don't try it because you think it's going to fill a gap. You know, I love the idea of exploring stuff. I'm kind of somewhere in between based on my mood, based on what I would try, or I could eat smash burgers, Chinese takeout, and barbecue every day.
That's one trifecta,
or some sort of rotation of those things. And when we were in Paris, I tried eggs mayonnaise.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I thought it was gonna be like deviled egg, and I love deviled egg, right? Like, I love picnic food, right? And the waiter, when I ordered it, watched me take a bite of it, and I was just like, as he was watching me, I was like, his name was Etienne. I'm like thinking to myself, he's setting me up. And I took a bite of it. And my wife and my daughter are giggling, and there may be a video, I don't know, but is it good? I'm like, not for me. It's different flavor profile than I was expecting.
But here you come home and you've got this great story now that is emblematic of the whole point because you tried something new.
That's exactly right, right? I was not looking for it to validate me. I wasn't looking to expand some. I was going to try and we were going to see what happens. And if it didn't work out, it's great. And you brought that great Winston Churchill quote up last week, right? Success isn't final and failure isn't fatal. Well, we would do well to remember that when we are having these feelings of emptiness when we've attained a goal. And if you're having the feeling of emptiness, that's okay. You're not broken. Take a look at our Arrive framework. Look at Mr. Rock's scarf model and kind of redefine the terms. I'm here. It's not what I thought it was going to be, or I'm not so sure I'm as satisfied. How can I change my perspective on this to make this a worthwhile experience for myself? How can I find a way to get the most out of this? I went back to what Tom Schultz said to me, and then I went and I tried to find something every day that made me feel a little bit happy about what I was doing. I would go up and I'd watch the sunrise and drink my coffee every morning to watch the sunrise that I could, so that if I never got a chance to do it, I had one more. And coincidentally, my last morning at sea, my last sunrise at sea, I didn't know it was going to be my last one, but I remember it. It was a beautiful night the night before. I remember seeing the stars before I went to bed. Great sunrise that morning. And the way luck would have it, that was my last time on a ship. And so thank you, Tom Schultz, wherever you are, for helping me to understand that feeling of emptiness. You can apply a little perspective in the Arrive framework, and you can take control and redefine it.
I'm blown away by that story, and special thanks to Admiral Schultz, who knew at the time that to activate that abundance mindset within you might make a difference. The opposite of abundance mindset is a deficit mindset. And perhaps we can leave our listener with this concept. To get to an abundance mindset doesn't mean that you ignore what's wrong or that you never want to strive for something else. It is simply the recognition of what you have in front of you, and the awareness that it may not be there forever. That it goes back to that last time discussion that we had a couple weeks ago. So a tip to consider when you're looking for that abundance mindset: whenever we have discomfort of any kind, anger, frustration, irritation, if you can choose curiosity, all of those negative emotions are designed to point you to a gap, an unmet need of some kind. And if you could fill that consciousness in the moment with, my unmet need is, I'm thinking that I need to be wearing the same Air Jordans as my neighbor. Actually, the ones I have right in front of me are amazing. To choose that abundance mindset in the moment, to choose that sunset, knowing it might not always be an option, that is a way to get out of the deficit. Use the negative emotions as signals for something that you need to be curious about from within.
Love that. I love that. I love the idea of leveraging curiosity to help change your perspective, or at least as a way to pop yourself up and to feel like I need to do something different. And I would offer to our listeners this: your goals are important and they can focus where you invest your time and your effort, but that's all they are, is they're your focus. They're not who you are. You define who you are. Your efforts don't define who you are. So just remember that. And I think that if you can apply the curiosity while being grounded in the fact that who you are, not what you do, I think that there's a lot of opportunity.
What a great note to end on. In fact, we have a treat coming up in the near future that has to do with recognizing that goals are important and a way to focus our efforts, but also they don't define who we are, because sometimes life happens, doesn't it, Jeff?
Absolutely. And when life happens, we're going to ask you to grab Dr. Rachel Goldman's book, When Life Happens. Cool thing is Rachel is a friend of mine from high school. We took Spanish together years and years ago. And Rachel has been on Oprah. She's all over the place right now with her new book. And Susan and I are going to start to bring guests onto imPERFECT. And our very first guest is going to be Dr. Rachel Goldman, who's a psychologist in cognitive behavioral theory. And we are going to explore with her how you can use your thoughts to reframe your perspective and dig into some of her nuggets from her book. So that's going to be the week, if everything goes according to plan as of now, the week of July 12th. So we'll hope that you'll check out Rachel on social media and join us for that special episode.
That's such an exciting thing when she says, when life happens, the mindset shift you need to manage stress, build confidence, and break free. How relevant is that to tonight? As a matter of fact, we're going to send a copy of this book to that listener who brought us that question tonight. We're going to buy a copy of Rachel's book, Life Happens. Tonight has been a total delight. I can't wait for the conversation to continue, but I'm also enjoying this moment and all the moments that got us here to episode 18 of imPERFECT, Better After Broken, the show where we celebrate the cracks, the scars, and the stories that make us stronger. I am Susan Hendrich.
And I'm Jeff Servello. To all of our fathers out there, happy Father's Day.
Ooh,
I hope
yes.
you had a wonderful day. If you're like me, hopefully every day is Father's Day for you. But thanks for joining us for part of your Father's Day.
Awesome. Join us next week right here on Sandcastle Radio, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. And we will look forward to kintsugi of life, putting all the pieces back together. Thanks so much for joining us. Where we celebrate the cracks, the scars, and the stories that make us stronger. Joe, I owe you $1 because it's always me that's messing this up.